Welcome to the Tyler Werner Show, discussing all the latest in Philadelphia sports.
Here we sit halfway through Season 1 of Doug Pederson, Carson Wentz, and this Eagles regime at 4-4. But I think we'd all agree that right now it's a rather unencouraging 4-4 after the way this season began. For the second week in a row, you can make a case that Doug Pederson is the main culprit of another winnable division game that winds up going down as another division loss. I know Carson Wentz showed some more rookie growing pains early in this game, but even still, they were able to put themselves in a position to win. And Doug Pederson again continues to make questionable coaching decisions and play calls, which is beginning to concern me. I don't care that it's his first year as head coach. In my eyes, you get hired to coach this football team, you are expected to be competent in making more logical decisions than what he's making in these critical situations.
And now, here's Tyler Werner.
Come on, that's terrible!
And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Tyler Werner Show. And yes, it is terrible. Right now, alright, we probably have to forget playoffs at this point, unfortunately for the Philadelphia Eagles. After this 3-0 start, where, again, we were like in La La Land here, as Philadelphia Eagles fans and analysts and podcast hosts like myself, we were in La La Land. You go 3-0, 75% chance you make the playoffs. And the way they started out 3-0 was very promising. And since that 3-0 start, this Eagles team has been 1-4, all right, and has dropped the ball. And it's very unfortunate and unencouraging, as I said in the intro, that it feels as though Doug Pederson has, in a way, as a coach, lost 2, maybe even 3 of these games, depending how you look at it. I mean, we'll just say the last 2. We can look back at the Lions game and how they lost it, and a few excuses, a few unfortunate reasons as to why they lost that game. The Redskins game where they just came out unprepared and had an uphill battle, and then the Dallas game, and this game. These last 2 games, division games, that you can't afford to continue losing like this. They lose another one against the Giants, and this is an Eagles team. I mean, well, I say this is an Eagles team. This is a Giants team, I should say, that for one reason or another struggles against the Eagles at MetLife Stadium, and just a lot of times just in general. Unfortunately, I mean, for the most part, we're not sitting here mostly blaming the defense for this game, although you could make a case. They didn't get pressure on Eli Manning. I mean, a lot of the times, the Eagles beat the Giants because they get pressure and they make Eli Manning a mess. And they weren't really able to do that this game. They only got in for 1 sack. It's almost as if Brandon Graham's the only one that is consistently getting pressure. Where's Fletcher Cox? I mean, he relies on sheer power to get to the quarterback, but he's making money now. And you need him in a big game like this to be able to get to the quarterback, to get to Eli Manning. Because I'll tell you what, Odell Beckham Jr. putting up 2 touchdowns against you, I mean, it's like the same old story if you can't get Eli Manning sacked and pressured. So, unfortunately, the defense, not coming out. It's recent weeks, too, it seems. And these losses. The Lions, you saw they came out unprepared. The Redskins. This game. I know Carson Wentz had a couple interceptions that I'm sure he wants back. I I don't know if he's starting to show a little more rookie growing pains without Lane Johnson out there, without, open receivers for the most part, most of the season, without tight end help for the most part this season. Because, this game, it was a little different. 27 for 47, 364 yards. That's a little different than the dink and dunk against the Cowboys. All right, I'm just doing round off math in my head here. That's almost 14 yards a throw. So there was obviously a little more downfield throwing this game. And for once, Zach Ertz shows up in a game this season with 8 receptions for 97 yards. And Jordan Matthews got his 6 for 88. And Brandon Treggs, for Bryce Treggs, I'm sorry. My bad on that. Well, it just goes to show you, where's this guy been? I forgot to even mention, the Eagles did what they should have done last week. The Tyler Werner Show finished up basically right before Josh Huff ultimately got cut and released here from the Philadelphia Eagles. Just like he should have been. All right? They did the right thing there. The guy, he's on Tampa Bay's practice squad now. Good for him. But you can't have him. He's not worth keeping over this. And, I know the whole thing with Doug Pederson. I want to wrap my arm around him and try to help him out and this and that. And then Howie Roseman kind of steps in and it's like, no.
Hit him up! Move him out!
So Doug Pederson kind of looks a little like a fool there in that situation, but since Doug Pederson, didn't quite, then I guess Howie Roseman kind of just step in and it's like, no, we're getting rid of this guy. And I'm glad. That's what should have been done in the first place. But, or at least suspended him until, more information. But the fact that they weren't going to do anything, well, Doug Pederson, that's just, come on. That's terrible.
Come on, that's terrible!
You're telling me. But anyhow, so Bryce Treggs gets it. First play he makes, 58-yard bomb. All right, it's a good way to start it off, And, he didn't have a whole lot after that. At least showed, hey, that's more than Nelson Aguilar's done lately. That's more than Dorial Green-Beckham has done lately. When do any of those guys make these, near 60-yard plays? They don't. So, that was, I guess somewhat encouraging to see. But again, besides that, it continues. All right, here's some of the Doug Pederson's questionable coaching decisions and play calls as of late are among the top of the heap as far as things to be concerned about for the future of this Eagles team. And obviously you can point at the cornerback play as another one, I guess, but the offensive line, again, Jason Kelsey, it looks like they're going to have to be looking into a new center next season, or in the off season, however you want to word it. And without Lane Johnson there, Jason Peters is just showing he just doesn't really have much left probably at this point. And I don't know if Carson Wentz, he sees the pressure coming in the A-gap, and unfortunately he throws it off his back foot. And it's just, he's rattled in there. He's not confident, that's for sure. His confidence is gone for the most part right now when it comes to staying in the pocket. And unfortunately, a couple early interceptions, and this Eagles team, they found themselves down 14-0. And again, wide receiver wise, again, Nelson Aguilar, Dorial Greenback. I mean, these guys, they're not good route runners. Dorial Green-Beckham is, 6'5" and whatever weight, and he plays like he's 5'11" and 180 pounds. All right? And he's got size, and maybe he's got some, but he just doesn't, football IQ, and just a general lack of how to play the position, lack of knowledge, I guess, lack of sense of how to play the position and run proper routes. I mean, it's really starting to see maybe why Tennessee just cut bait with them. Aside from off the field issues, it's easy to see that this guy is just, along with Nelson Aguilar, just kind of a bust in this league. First round talent, but ultimately just a bust. And here they are, first round picks, wide receiver on this Eagles team, not contributing at all, really. But whatever. They had Reuben Randall, and obviously that wasn't looking like that was panning out with him. And they bring Dorial Green-Beckham in here as maybe a project player, and so they didn't really give up anything to get him. So whatever. Look, we know where Howie Roseman and company need to fill some holes on this team in the offseason. We got, the Eagles, they got what they got right now. They didn't make any trades last week, so they got what they got. Now with Bryce Treggs in the mix as well. And we'll just, have to wait and see how they address this position in the future, in the offseason, as well as the offensive line, as well as the cornerback position, perhaps. But again, at the top of the heap for me, and for many of us, this game and the game before that against the Cowboys, division games that were right there in the Eagles' grasp to win, that ended up as losses. The main concern is Doug Pederson. And again, it's unfortunate the skepticism I had when they hired him, as that many of us had, is starting to just kind of creep back in a way. It's easy to see him start 3-0 and look as good as they were looking, and just kind of, and Doug Pederson, he wasn't really in critical situations where he needed to, make better calls than what he made. And it's a shame when Malcolm Jenkins, one of your, I guess, defensive captains, so to speak, one of your best players on the defensive side of the ball, is getting interviewed by Sal Paolantonio, and after the game, and kind of just says how, we can't win games like this being over-aggressive on some of these situations. And, we can't win games like that. And, he's right.
I agree.
And it's almost as if Doug Pederson is out there guessing in a lot of these situations. Like, you're down 14-0. You need to just get points on the board, for crying out. You need to kick a field goal. And as last week, it goes back to, not kicking field goals that were made earlier in the game at even a couple yards greater distance. These decisions to go for it. And then play calls. I mean, there's a 4th and 2 on the first play of the second quarter. And Carson Wentz is athletic, and he's mobile, but he's not quite a running quarterback. And on a 4th and 2 play in the second quarter, first play of the second quarter, he calls for a Wentz keeper. And the Giants were just all over it. And it was a 4-yard loss. That's not quite his game. And they tried it again, about 9.5 minutes left on a 3rd and 4. And I mean, on a 3rd and 4, on that play, on a 3rd and 4, they're doing a quarterback keep. Who does that in this league? Now, they had that 4th down play, that 4th and 9 or whatever, that they were luckily able to make earlier in the game. But a lot of these are just fundamental flaws that Doug Pederson is kind of getting exposed with here in these critical situations. And in the next segment of the Tyler Werner Show today, we will hear Doug Pederson being asked about in the day after press conference, and how he kind of just defends what he did, as if, no, we did the right thing, and just standing by it. And
what?
As if, everything he did was, he made the right calls this game. Called a flawless game. Almost a little reminiscent of Chip Kelly. All right.
Thanks, guys.
It's really not encouraging. I mean, and then this running back rotation thing. That, look, I'll continue to say how, yeah, maybe Deuce Staley is the guy, but if you're Doug Pederson, all right, if you're seeing this running back rotation the way it's Wendell Smallwood, after he gains 19 yards on an early carry, he doesn't get a single carry until about 9.5 minutes left in the entire game, and he gains 6 yards on that. This doesn't make any sense. Just like last week, it didn't make any sense that when Darren Sproles, he's going to take a breather for a play, all right, they bring out a cold Wendell Smallwood who hadn't carried the ball all game. He hadn't even been in the game. They bring him out and then he fumbles. This game, they get him in early. He gains 19 yards on his almost only carry of the game. And then they don't use him the rest of the game, pretty much, until late in the game. Gains 6 yards and still didn't really use him. Didn't use him after that anyways. This doesn't make any sense.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
So if Deuce Staley is in charge of this running back rotation, and you're the head coach calling the plays on offense, don't you got to see this and change something about it? Now, I know Darren Sproles, he's the lead running back, if you will. Which I don't know, again, I mean, I don't know if he could hold up all season getting the full workload like this. I mean, he got 13 carries, which, I mean, it's not an extreme amount, although it's more than he's used to getting, certainly. 57 yards, 4 point, a so-so day on the ground. But, again, if Wendell Small... All right, you got Ryan Matthews. He had a touchdown run, 5 for 15. And Kenyon Barner, a carry for 3 yards. But Wendell Small... All right. If he's his first carry of the game... He's going to run for 19 yards. And then you're not going to give him the ball almost the rest of the game until you give him one more carry. It just doesn't make any sense. If you're the head coach of this football team, I mean, you got to see that. And at some point, you got to say, like, hey, Smallwood gave us, 20. Why not give him the ball a few more times? See if he's going to get in a rhythm. See if this is his day. And if you want to... continue to mix Sproles in there. All right, he does a decent job, but you can use Wendell Smallwood a little more than one carry almost the whole game. It doesn't...
I agree.
It doesn't make any sense. So, again, a lot of these play calls are just goofy in situations where they need to be better. And they just don't, give it to Carson Wentz on a keeper, 3rd and 4, and 4th and 2. And that's not necessarily his thing. You do a read option play here and there, but these critical situations where you need to convert, you have to find a way to play a little more to your strengths. That's not to say Carson Wentz isn't athletic and he's not mobile, but not quite designed for those play calls. Well, we'll be right back on the other side. Again, it's just another disappointing division game, and likely the playoffs are now gone. Playoff hopes. Now last in the NFC East. And now you got several teams in the wild card picture ahead of you. So, that's pretty much it for right now. As far as playoffs go. Now it's like we're kind of back in maybe evaluation mode on the year, and it's not too much fun. But coming up next, we'll have some fun. Maybe poking fun at Doug Pederson. And some of the things, well, you know what I mean. Not poking fun, but just kind of having a disagreement with how Doug Pederson addressed a lot of his decisions and play calls in his day after press conference. That and more coming up right here on the Tyler Werner Show.
Hi there, I'm Hank Hill. Well, I'd like to tell you what Strickland can do to meet your energy needs. You see, at Strickland, the customer comes first. It's kind of interesting. The word customer begins with CU. Well, we don't see you as just another sale, but as a member of our team. I thought you might enjoy 7.5 gallons of pure premium propane. Strickland Propane, the customer comes first.
What is it about good sex that makes me have to crap? Guess it's all that pumping. Pump and dump.
Pump and dump. Never stop the pumping. Always keep her satisfied. Pump and dump.
You really jarred something loose, Tiger.
Investigators are calling it the heist of the century. The grand robbery of Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs, committed by some apparently hungry NFL officials who love their balls.
When I came in Monday morning, I was shocked to learn of the news reports about the balls and the process that happened between when they were prepared and went to the officials and went to the game.
As shocked as Belichick was of the news, perhaps Brady, the last man out of the kitchen on that Sunday night, was even more shocked to hear of the news of the theft.
I have a process that I go through. It was the same process that I always go through. When I felt them, they were perfect. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone touching those. I would zip those things up and lock them away, and that's what I thought I was doing.
As Brady and Belichick up the ante on their ball security, you'll just have to pick up a pack of their meatballs the next time you hit the grocery store and enjoy just how perfect these balls really are.
Tom's personal preferences on his ball security are something that he can talk about in much better detail than I could possibly provide.
And we're back right here on the Tyler Werner Show. Another edition after another close Eagles loss that very easily could have been turned into a win. Yeah, it's one of these things too, some people bring up, a lot of people, I mean, these losses here with the Eagles, they're all close games, and it's a positive spin, that Doug Pederson this week has tried to put on, and that, many of us have, these losses by the Eagles, they're all close, they're close games, and to me that only makes it a little more frustrating when critical decisions not to kick field goals in certain spots where you you got to take points over no points, stuff like that. That's where Doug Pederson being incompetent at doing this is just extra troublesome to me. Speaking of competitive games, Sixers tonight, an overtime loss, still out looking for their first win of the season, and they take the Pacers to overtime tonight, but they end up losing 122 to 115 in overtime.
Are you kidding me?
So not getting the job done there. And then, not that they're really playing for a whole lot this season, but the Flyers, you want to talk about competitive, even more competitive games. Last night, in typical Flyer fashion, losing in a shootout to the Red Wings. But nevertheless, last night marked their 8th straight game decided by one goal. It's amazing. There's nothing. I can't remember anything like it. This is the 8th game in a row the Flyers have played that was decided by one goal. They in the last week they lose to the Red Wings last night, in a shootout. They beat the Canadiens on Saturday, they lost to the Canadiens 5-4 on Saturday, and then last Thursday night, the Flyers actually won in the shootout by beating the Islanders. So, a lot, just a lot of. It's hard to believe. Like, the Flyers are. You can play all these games, and they're all one-goal games, and a lot of them. Shootout last Thursday, overtime one before that. I mean, shootout game against the Sabres. I mean, it's mind-boggling. They're playing this many games that are in a row, decided by one goal or less. So, fortunately, even though they lose in the shootout or whatever, they come up with the all-important overtime loss point, which, on one hand helps, but bottom line, they're in every game so far. I mean, I don't know. Thus far, it's been a strange, rocky season with the Flyers. No major winning streaks, no major losing streaks. It's still early, obviously rather early in the season to, I guess, really project down the stretch how good they'll be or not. But, so, an always interesting season in Flyerville, if I could use that word. But anyways, we get it back to the Eagles here. And listen to, get a load of what Doug Pederson says, if that makes any sense. It's mind-boggling to me, if you haven't heard this, how Doug Pederson, it's as if he seems to defend everything he's called, every decision he made in this game, a lot of these wacky decisions he's making. It's like I feel very confident with what I did at the end of the day. We may stop and start it a little bit, just to insert a little commentary, but nevertheless, here's Doug Pederson on the day after press conference earlier this week, after the loss to the New York Giants.
You mentioned that Ryan Ashton was still your guy last week, but the numbers certainly don't look like he's the guy right now. Is Darren Sproles the lead back for the season?
Well, right now, yeah, by stats and by what you're seeing, I would say that Darren is the number one back right now. Ryan is still a big part. You saw the touchdown run he had yesterday, and Kenyon had a nice run. Wendell had a nice run, so it's still a little bit of the running back by committee. Obviously, we haven't hung our hat on one guy, but we tend to lean more towards Darren Sproles. It's hard to take him off the field right now.
Is 80% too much moving forward? That's how many snaps
Darren, yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, we talked about it coming out of the Dallas game, and just got to make sure we're doing the right thing. Make sure with Darren is just keeping him, keeping him available, especially as the season wears on. Keep him healthy and keep him going.
Do you feel like you ran the ball enough yesterday?
Well, 21 attempts if you take Carson's 4 out of it. Probably could run a little bit more. Obviously, in each one of these games, you get yourself into a 14-0 hole right away, and you feel like sometimes you got to kind of press and get it all back in one play. I did feel like we were effective in the run game. Some of the things we did, we just, watching the tape again this morning, we just missed on a couple of blocks and a couple of assignment errors and things we got to clean up this week.
In general, do you feel like you're not running enough? You talked about limiting Carson.
Yeah, and it's a good question. I would love to run the ball more. Obviously, I think it does help Carson, where you're not putting everything, the whole game, let's say, on his shoulders. And that's a full, that's the run game. We do a lot in the run game. We ask Carson to do a lot with the RPO things, with the read options, making some checks there. So, I think going forward, probably should rely on the run just a little bit more.
Kelvin was saying that came out in the second quarter because you guys have the rotation now for that. Is that something new? Is that also because Jalen Mills, or is it
Well, it really started when Ron Brooks, got hurt, and we didn't have him. So now we're having to. You see that nickel spot. Malcolm's been down in there a little bit, and we've had Jalen in there, and then obviously understanding where Leo's at right now with his injury. Just kind of keeping everybody fresh and keeping everybody as healthy as you can, not only during the course of the game, but during the remainder of the season.
Doug, when Carson was missed receiver throwing interceptions, generally he's been balls that say a lot. This is something we've seen since the spring. You guys changed some of his mechanics. Is that still a byproduct of that, or is there something else that's bothering?
No, a couple of those 2 picks early in the football game. Obviously, he had pressure on one, and he was trying to throw it. Actually, the DGB, I think it was the second pick. The first one, again, just sailed high. He was, out of the pocket, which, I felt like he didn't have to move. He could have stayed right there in the pocket and delivered the football. But, those aren't necessarily mechanical things as they are just the way he reacted to a little bit of color or pressure in the pocket.
Go
ahead, finish.
So it's pressure that's affecting him.
Some of it's pressure. Some of it's like a game, a TE game or an ET game or something quick that flashes, and he had to slide a couple times. One time he stepped up into the pocket, and he was on a third down, and the second interception, I believe, and he ended up trying to come back to DGB, but had a guy right in his face, and the pocket was clean enough to deliver the football, but that quick pressure from a quarterback standpoint makes you throw a bit high.
Doug, now that you've had time to reflect on it, how do you feel about your decisions to go on fourth down twice?
You know what? I still feel strong about those. I think the decisions to go for it just shows confidence and belief in the guys at that time. I felt like we were moving the ball, and again, at the end of the day, when you look at it, we had more opportunities in this game. To me, in my opinion, didn't come down to those two plays. There were enough things in this game, and again, that cost us this football game. But I still stick by what I did, how I chose to go for it in both of those situations.
All right, timeout right there. Again, that comes off as a little Chip Kelly-ish, does it not? It's like, oh, there are a lot of things we could have done in this game. That's beside the point. You're getting the questions coming in about that. The question at hand here is these decisions that he's making on fourth down, or maybe you kick the field goal, or maybe you don't go for it, and maybe you do better play calls for that matter. And on a 4th and 2, not try to, run a Carson Wentz sweep or whatever. Whatever they're running on some of these plays. And have Zach Ertz as your lead blocker, who you should know is an inept blocker. But anyway, let's resume here through this press conference with Doug Pederson the day after the loss against the Giants.
On the Carson Wentz run to the left, it just seemed like the Giants were moving up before the ball was snapped, and there was never any chance of that working. What did you see there?
They zero blitzed us, and they came actually off of the tight end side when we ran to the left side, and we missed an assignment. Again, assignment error on the play, and in critical situations like that, if one piece of it fails, then the rest of it has to kind of pick up that piece. Meaning there's other pieces on defense that are free, and it just happened on that play again. We just missed it. We just failed on the block, and it was just it wasn't a mental thing. It was just a physical error that we just missed on a block, and it caused us not to get the first down.
More of Carson's 5 picks have been early innings in the first quarter. The only one after the first quarter, but at the end of the short game. Right. Is he coming out trying to do too much, trying to kind of be too aggressive? What do you see from him early?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I go back to the Minnesota game, the 2 picks there, reference those real quick. One, he was trying to throw a quick little outbreaking route to Selleck, and was just wide of the mark and got picked. The second one in that game felt like he might have forced the ball, actually just forced it down the field. He threw it into coverage, and it got intercepted. The ones yesterday, he had opportunities, whether the progression of the play to go other places with the ball. I think sometimes, especially young quarterbacks, and these are the things that we're working and dealing with Carson, is making sure he understands the whole contour of the play and what the initial play is, what is designed to do. What's the cover? What's the coverage beater that it's best against? And if it's not that coverage, where do I go with the football? These are the things that we keep talking with and working through. And this is all part of the growth growth process that he's going through, and the two yesterday were kind of that. Just the fact that, just gets a little tunnel vision sometimes, focused in or locked in on one receiver when there are other opportunities to go somewhere with the football, and it's either going to be incomplete and we punt. You just can't have, obviously, the interception, 5 plays of the game, and 2 of them are to the other team.
Are there decisions from yesterday that you second-guessed or wish you had better?
No, not yesterday. I felt comfortable in everything we did, the way I called the game. Even down the stretch, we had opportunities, in that last 4 plays of the game, to have opportunities to extend that drive and potentially score. And we just missed on the last play of the game, a play that we actually completed earlier to the same receiver earlier in the game in the third quarter. Same play, fourth quarter. It's just we gotta keep working and keep making those plays.
What's the 5 points for Carson and for Jordan on that last play?
It's a little of both. 1, Jordan could look a little sooner. 2, the ball could be, it's 4th down. You got to give, as a quarterback, you just got to give our guy an opportunity, to make the play. And that's just again, understanding the situation and putting yourself in those spots. And excuse me. And those are the things that, I know in Carson's case, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know after the game he was very down, about that whole last series, about some of the decisions and throws that he made. And, he makes that play in practice 99 out of 100 times, and those two guys are on the same page with that particular route. We've seen it, the Cleveland game, the touchdown is the same route, and he makes that play. So these are just things that, again, we're just continuing to work through, and we're obviously headed in the right direction, and we're going to make more of those down the stretch.
You had 5 drives down in the late games, under 5 minutes. Potentially won those games, but you had 19 plays on those drives and gained only 27 yards. Are the players tensing up in this situation? Why aren't they producing?
Well, I don't think the players are tensing up. I think our sense of urgency on offense has to pick up. Just knowing the situation. Again, we're, when you have a few, and again, you got some young guys out there that are kind of learning these situations, and the more we show them, and the more, again, just kind of working through decisions, route combinations, just the execution of the play, and just understanding the play itself has a big part of the success in the end of football games. And then the bottom line, at the end of the day, it just comes down to as professional athletes, we just make a play. Someone just make a play, and that's what we gotta find out who's going to be that guy, and as we build and as we grow, those are things we'll figure out and get better at.
All right, so there you have it. There's the gist of Doug Pederson and what he had to say at Monday's press conference. And again, the cliche, players got to execute or whatever. Yeah, we know their deficiencies. We know they're missing some playmakers, and Carson Wentz doesn't have it easy right now as quarterback of the Eagles, and he's got rookie growing pains that early on in the season we didn't really see. Now we see them, and they got a tough game hosting the Atlanta Falcons this week. And they're, basically any playoff hopes for a wild card spot are pretty much on the line here. They lose this, and then they're really out of it and don't really stand any chance at playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, as we are at mid-season, basically. Every team has played 8 games or or 9, select few. We'll go around the NFLs. The playoff races in the conferences, going to start coming into full form here. We're going to go around the NFL like we normally would around this time on the Tyler Werner Show. The top 5 thoughts of the week. Certainly there were a decent amount of them this week. A lot of games that had some interesting results and may have spoken volumes about the direction of their season. Let's start with number 5. We just brought up the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, their high-powered offense continued to impress on Thursday Night Football. Cue up the Thursday Night Football theme. Perfect timing. The Atlanta Falcons get a 43-28 division win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thursday Night Football. And ultimately, they move to 6-3 and have a pretty commanding lead right now on that division, the NFC South. No Carolina Panthers team this year that's right there in the mix with them really right now, or anyone else. So right now it's the Falcons to lose. Number 4, the Seattle Seahawks beat the Buffalo Bills 31-25 in some rather controversial fashion. As we all know, the controversy that many people feel it cost the Buffalo Bills the game. That there should have been, on Richard Sherman, a roughing the kicker call, and it didn't get called. So, quite an interesting game up there in Seattle. The Seahawks bounced back after a loss last week, get a win. They moved to 5-2-1 after their tie with the Cardinals the other week. Number 3, the Baltimore Ravens snapped their 4-game losing streak by beating the Pittsburgh Steelers 21-14, and they are now tied with them at a 4-4 in the AFC North. So, at the top of the AFC North, that's and then you got the Bengals in the mix there too. It's kind of almost anybody's division over there right now for the taking. It might not take too many wins to really win that division, but the Steelers now they're now at 4-4. Not quite where many of us had them right now in the season. Already lost 4 games halfway through. They're tied with the Ravens at 4-4 now, record-wise. So, big win for the Ravens. Now the Ravens, they seem to have they're in the mix there to win that division. For a while, they were 3-4. They had lost 4 straight games and looked like they were going down the tubes, but can't say that now. Number 2, thought around the NFL after Week 9. The Detroit Lions hand the Minnesota Vikings their 3rd straight loss with a 22-16 overtime win. The Lions moved to 5-4. And the Vikings are now 5-3. Last week they lost to the Bears, of course, after losing to the Eagles, first loss of the season. They coughed one up against the Bears in the division, and now the Lions have beaten the Vikings. And of course the Lions 4-1 in their last 5 games. And hey, they could possibly win the division this year if the Packers continue to just kind of be average and not up to par. And the Vikings, they lost a 3rd straight game. They're cold. They're on a cold streak. So very interesting. The Vikings just seem to be falling apart a little bit, or coming back down to earth. Number 1 thought around the NFL in Week 9. It was the Oakland Raiders. Ladies and gentlemen, defeating the Denver Broncos 30-20, putting up 30 against the scary Denver defense. Normally scary, that is. And the Raiders now sit atop the AFC West at 7-2. Latavius Murray, a 3-touchdown field day, piling up some yards. And the Raiders, ladies and gentlemen, are starting to come a long way over in Oakland right now. And they're 7-2. Essentially right now, the second seed in the AFC. I mean, they're doing pretty good. They're impressing. Their offense is for real. Now, the Chiefs, of course, they won again this week. They're 6-2, so that's and then you got the Broncos at 6-3. That's quite a division there. The Chargers, I guess they're 4-5 now or whatever. So they're not a playoff team, but not necessarily a pushover like maybe the 49ers or the Browns or whoever else. But it's rather interesting. I mean, the Patriots, number one team in the AFC, not much of a surprise. But could you picture like the Patriots and the Oakland Raiders in the AFC Championship? The Raiders. They haven't been in the playoffs in years. And yet, this year, they could jump. I mean, they're an elite team right now in the AFC. I mean, could they make that jump that quickly to possibly being a team that takes on the Patriots in the AFC Championship? I think it's kind of funny how I always, every year I kind of like, when predicting who's going to be in the playoffs and whatnot, and it's like, well, one thing we know is the Patriots, they'll be in the AFC Championship game. Who's going to play against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game? I always feel like that's the,
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week.
Who will Brady and Belichick be awaiting in that game?
To me, those balls are perfect.
That tends to be the, and it's pretty true for so many seasons where it's, and yeah, this I guess the last 3 seasons, whether it's on the road or they've represented, well, not represented, but they've been in the AFC Championship game. So it's, but who's going to take them on this year? It might be, who knows? What if it's the Raiders? Well, anyways, here I'm going gaga over the Raiders for quite some time. But anyways, as we wrap things up here on the Tyler Werner Show today, it's again, this schedule, this buzzsaw of a schedule that they've found themselves in, division opponents and the Dallas Cowboys who have been rolling, who they had a chance to beat and they should have beaten and didn't beat, and the Giants who, again, another chance to get a win here. They don't. A much-needed division win, and they're at the bottom of the division now. And now they're hosting the Atlanta Falcons. If there's one thing the Eagles have going for them in this, is it's a home game. I don't know. The bottom line is this. The Eagles are struggling on the road this year. All right? If you think about it, the Lions, they lost to on the road. Game they should have won. But they lost to them on the road. The Redskins, road loss. And here the Cowboys, and the Giants, boom, boom, road losses. That doesn't mean, not to use it as an excuse, but they're able to be, they're able to beat Pittsburgh. I know it wasn't Pittsburgh at their best, but they're able to beat Pittsburgh, and they're able to beat the Vikings, who were 5-0 heading into the game, at home. So I don't know if maybe there's something to be said here for this Eagles team that maybe at home, maybe a little home field advantage they're establishing here. I don't know. We may learn more this week when they face the Atlanta Falcons, when they host them. This is a high-powered offense coming in here. As I mentioned in my top 5 thoughts around the NFL, thought number 5 this week. All right, I mean, they're pretty well set. Matt Ryan is having a Pro Bowl season. All right, he's kind of returning to form of a few years ago when the Falcons, were representing. All right, I did it again. Not representing, but playing for the NFC Championship, playing to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. So again, it's a tough situation here for the Eagles. They got it. I mean, we'll see what happens. It inspires me a little bit that the Eagles were going downfield a little more. This dink and dunk offense was kind of, abandoned a little bit. They were going down the field. That Zach Ertz came alive a little bit for a change. And that Bryce Tregg showed a little something, at least out of his couple receptions. We'll see. I don't know what to think right now as far as how the Eagles are going to come out. But all I know is, though, it's kind of a must-win situation here for this Eagles team as far as keeping any hopes of a wild card berth alive as we head down the stretch here. Because I think it's safe to say this is the Cowboys' division this year. As much as we hate to say it, as much as I hate to say it, I think it's the truth. I mean, for crying out loud, they're 7-1 now, 7-1, and the Eagles almost beat them. That could have really shifted the direction of this season. You can look at the Lions game. Had they won that could really shift the direction of this season. But you know what? Every game they're in it. At least they haven't gotten their doors blown off yet. But still, they're 1-4 in their last 5 games, and that's not something to be happy about after you start 3-0. Doug Pederson, he's got to get his act together when it comes to his play calling, especially when they're going to go for it on 4th downs that maybe they wouldn't be good going for. All right? Yeah. Earlier in the season, he'd go for 4, and it worked. The play call would be good, and they were converting them. But these 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s, when taking field goals, take points, that might end up being, the better idea, the more logical idea, and it may have cost them that there were 2 opportunities to go for field goals, and that happened to be the difference in the game. 2 field goals. I don't know. We'll be back next week on the Tyler Werner Show. We'll know more. We'll learn more. The Eagles, they need a win, at least to keep playoff hopes alive. If they don't, if they lose to the Falcons, lose at home here, it would be their first home loss of the season. If they lose to the Falcons, it's pretty much over. And I think we'll officially have to play some taps as far as playoff hopes are concerned to begin the Tyler Werner Show next week. So whether do we not, I guess, remains to be seen. But we'll see what happens as the Eagles take on the Atlanta Falcons this week. I don't know what to think. But I had good feelings about them beating the Giants, and they let me down. They let many of us down. As far as the Falcons, I think they're a little more for real this year, and I do not have a good feeling as to the Eagles' defense, what they're going to do. What are they going to be able to do? It's up to them. They got to get pressure on Matt Ryan. That's the bottom line. They have to force him to turn the ball over a little bit. They have to force him into some mistakes. They have to set a tone early. They have to get to him. They have to sack him. That's the bottom line. When the defense is able to do that this season, we notice that the Eagles are successful overall and tend to win. So we'll see. We shall see. And we shall discuss next week on the Tyler Werner Show, as always. So thank you for tuning in, as we're now at the midpoint of the Eagles season, halfway through the regular season of 2016. We'll talk to you next time on the Tyler Werner Show, as always.